The truth is invulnerable. The truth never dies. However, the truth can be locked in a box and buried and hidden away from you so that you think it's dead and that you lose all hope. So, in keeping with my Christianity and my general moral consideration of other people, and the fact that there's so much censorship and miscommunication, let's say, lies on the internet, I thought, well, I will give you a little heads up. I will give you some of the truth that I have found. And you can go and check every single word and find out if it's true yourself. Never trust me, never trust anyone, never trust another person to tell you the truth, because it's just very unlikely that that's what they're doing. So, before I tell you these truths, I'm going to give you a little a crash course in how to check facts, check that people are actually not misleading you. Here is how you do that. You write down the claims that they make, word for word, and then you get on the internet, or in the library, or both, and you find as many sources as you can that mention the claim that they made. Now, make sure you get sources that support them as well, because they might be true, and you also get sources that are against them, in case they're lying. And what you do is you take the time to read all of these sources in great detail, all the against and all the for, and then you compare the differences between the two. Now that is where you will find the grain of truth in the sea of bullshit. That grain of truth is the thing that's going to allow you to make an intelligent, informed decision and figure out what is actually true and what is not true. Also keep in mind, if you don't do this, if you don't do the written and the reading work, then you will have to rely upon speech, which is obviously opinion and not factual. Speech is like what I'm doing now. I'm telling you something, and you can either go, okay then, and just believe it, and go off into the world with a new, a new perspective based on my speech, or you can do what an intelligent, truthful, moral, good person would do, and make a note of that speech, go away and read about what I'm saying, read the for and the against, and compare these two perspectives, and then find where they differ and analyse the differences, like I say, because you're an intelligent person, and if you compare those differences, you will get a fair idea of which side is telling you the truth and has your best interest at heart to tell you that truth, which one of those has good intentions for you and your life, and which one intends to utilise you as a tool of war, to turn you into a screwdriver or a wood axe, and use you as a tool to chop away at somebody else, so that their reputation is ruined and nobody gets to hear their side of the story. So the truth is therefore defeated. It's not killed, it still exists, but it's locked away in a box and buried, and it's nowhere near to where you are, so you will not find it. So, now that we know a little bit about how to detect truth and delineate that from what is a lie, now that we've done that, let's go through a few simple truths which I have learned over my 40.5 years of life. First of all, when I was young, I used to think all religions were a lie, no gods were real, no spirits were real, the human consciousness wasn't real, everything was scientific, we were meat robots, driven by particles, molecules and food, and everything else that happened that we couldn't explain was just a coincidence or a trick of the mind. Now, I have found this out to be false. How have I found this out to be false? Well, I myself have actually had dreams that have later come true. Or even better than that, and you might even have experienced this yourself, I have had dreams and daydreams which pointed to things which could be changed. So that I could go into those scenarios, those situations in my real life, armed with a warning of something which was going to happen, which would be bad for me, and then with the foresight of those dreams, or those daydreams, behave differently, or go to a different place, say a different thing, do something differently than I would have previously done, and then the result was good for me. So I saved money, or I avoided getting run over, or I split up with someone who later was revealed to be a liar, or I avoided a bad situation for me and my family, or something like that. Now, in the past, I wouldn't have believed you had you told me that, and neither would I have found much in the way of evidence if I'd have just looked for that. But like I said, if you look for the evidence for something like that, and you look for the evidence against something like that, and then you compare that little overlap, you know, the bit where they disagree, that's the bit you want to have the most time spent on, you will find out that that is actually true. And not only is it true today for me and for you, you could just as happily do that. It's not like a skill you learn, it's just a thing that you notice. Hundreds of people before me have been doing it, far more advanced and more successfully than I have. And thousands of people before them have done it. And this is recorded throughout history and cannot be certifiably denied at this point. For instance, there are various prophecies throughout the Old Testament and the Gospel, the New Testament, the Bible. And when I was younger and I read these, purely and simply, I was a critic. I wanted to prove that God wasn't real, that all religions were false, and that's the reason why I read the Bible and knew about the Bible. And my bias led me to avoiding the truth. I didn't compare the bits that overlapped. I just concentrated on the bits which I could use. And that's why I was biased. So now that I have dropped my bias, and I've in fact gone towards the bit I was discriminating against, that's where I live now, I have realised these prophecies have come true throughout time and are even happening right now in the Middle East. But like I say, don't take my word for it. Please pick up a Bible, an Old Testament as well. Whether you read it for spiritual guidance or not, whether you believe in a God or not, doesn't even matter. That's not why you're buying these books. You are buying these books as reference tomes so that you can write down all the claims that you want to prove as true or false. Write down the claims. Then look at history and the geopolitics of today. Write down what's actually happening. And then compare what's in those prophecies directly to what's happening in today's world. And like I say, the bit that overlaps is either going to agree and be accurate and prove to be true, or is going to be completely different and have no similarity whatsoever and will prove to be false. So that's the first thing that I realise is now true. Christian prophecies, and actually Old Testament Hebraic Jewish prophecies, largely are extremely accurate, like way more accurate than anything else that I've ever known that is that old. Like some of these prophecies are 1500, 2000 years old. They're really old. And they are unerringly accurate. So that's the first thing. Prophecies are true. They're not made up. They're not a psyop, or they're not there to mislead you. They're actually, you can prove them to be true. The second thing is not all religions are equal. Because once I'd figured this out, I still hadn't become a Christian by this point, by the way, but I had realised that these prophecies were coming true, and I thought to myself, I know what to do. Buy all the religious books. Read all the religious books. Write down every single claim in every single book, and compare that to history, and then I can generate a pattern and I can start making these prophecies myself. I still was convinced at this point that it was a science, that it was a human created skill that you could learn having these prophecies. So that's what I did. I wrote down all the different claims from all the different religious books, including the Quran, the Torah, all the main ones. And I realised, hang on a minute, most of these are complete baloney. Like, there's no truth to any of these at all. They're completely wrong. The prophecies they make, I mean, you can just tell reading them. These don't sound like things that could be true. Not like the Christian Bible prophecies or the Old Testament prophecies, which, although I was sceptical at first, at least I thought, well, you know, it's not out of the question. It's not like completely ludicrous. But then when you look at the Quranic prophecies, for instance, they seriously test your ability to have faith. And that's why they need to demand submission from you and use violence and harassment to get their followers to believe. Because even the most simple human mind will read into these prophecies in the Quranic scriptures, and alarm bells in the Maccabean mind will immediately start to ring. But like I say, once again, do not take my word for it. Do not just take my word that these things are true. Write them down yourself. Buy a Quran. Buy 2 Qurans, actually, because it's a bit tricky with the Quran. There's 2 versions, even though they claim that the Quran is one thing. Buy an Arabic one. It'll take you some time. And then translate it using Google Translate or some other tool as you're reading it. And then compare that to the English version. So the second truth I want to introduce you to is not all religions are false. And the ones that are true, in my eyes, that I checked to be factual, are the Christian prophecies and the Old Testament prophecies. And the ones that I found to be false are the Quranic scriptures and the Muslim prophecies. And the reason I can say that is because now, 28 years later, after I started that educational journey for myself, every single prophecy that I wrote down from the Christian New Testament or the Jewish Old Testament, every single one of those prophecies has either already come true, is happening right now in the Middle East and in Ukraine, or looks like it will happen very soon. And I have in fact predicted some of these things separately myself. So that's point number 2. Not all religions are false. Christianity and the Old Testament have demonstrated that they have truth in there, whether you believe in God or not. The scriptures have truth in there. They predicted modern day events and politics very, very accurately. But the Quranic scriptures didn't. They just predicted a load of nonsense that never actually happened. And actually, they've predicted the end of the world by now. So if Islam was honest, it would admit the world did not end when it said it was going to end. Neither did the end times prophecy in the Quran happen. Namely, a horned horse with wings, a winged unicorn, didn't fly up, crack the moon in half, and reveal paradise with Allah. That never happened. And that was supposed to have happened in the 1700s. Then it was supposed to happen again. They revised it. It was supposed to happen in 2012. Then they said, we got it slightly wrong. It was 2016. But it never happened. So it's demonstrably false, whether you believe it or not. Whereas the Old Testament prophecy was that the ill nations of the world will collect and attack Israel during the age of information, which is presumably now. That's even what we call it, the age of information. The prophecy was that these nations would line up, attack Israel, and they would lose. Now, I don't know how much you know about military strategy and world events, but I think that is the likely result. Israel will beat all these countries, but it will have to be a world war. It will kick off a world war, because that's what these cultists want. That's one of their things that they say in their scripture, is they need Jews, Christians, apostates and infidels 100% cleared off the face of the earth in order for their paradise event to happen. So that brings me on to point number 3. Islam is a death cult. Even though you will be called Islamophobe for revealing this true, easily checkable fact. Remember I said you have to check every word, buy your own Qurans, translate the Arabic one and the English one will be there, and then you can check all of these with what's happening in real life. Islam is a death cult who thought the world was going to end, but it didn't. And now they have revised their approach so that they can cause that to happen. That's what they're doing in Palestine today. Islam, although they will not openly admit this to you because it serves their purpose to lie to you and deceive you until they can complete their mission, what that mission is to bring down the Jews, then bring down the Christians, then bring down the apostates, and then bring down the infidel. Which is everybody. That's literally almost everyone on the planet. It is all the different countries with flags, all the different faith groups and religions, everyone who has a politic which doesn't involve subjugating women, homosexuals, old people, disabled people, musicians, virtually everybody. And a condition that they know they need to follow so that they can complete this mission is deceit. They need to lie to you and I, and about you and I. And that is why suddenly we are going backwards in society. Everyone's racist or sexist or Islamophobic or transphobic or a bigot of some kind. Now, the reason they are doing that is point number 4. Point number 4 is if you are too afraid to talk and have an open discussion about these things for fear of being called racist, bigot, Islamophobe or whatever, if you are too afraid to have the discussions, then you cannot complete your thought trail. Because you need to discuss it with other people and compare those sources in order to educate yourself and get to the truth. So that's point 4. Censorship. You have to avoid censorship and you have to be brave. Do not be afraid of these people who are going to call you names simply for having an open discussion, simply for wanting to know the truth accurately and to have a discussion, an open discussion where you might be wrong, you might be right, but you have that open discussion with facts on the table so that you can figure out together what the actual truth is. And I feel like all this shadow banning, the censorship, the use of these fake accounts to delete your comments so that nobody sees them, anyone who looks online might well think there has never been a discussion and we all just agree. But that's not the case. So in conclusion, point 1, point 2, point 3 and point 4 all add up to one main point, which is this, and this is the point of this video. The future will happen, whether we like it or not. And a lot of the time, it feels like we are powerless. But what you have to keep in mind is prophecies are not there to remove your power to change things. Prophecies are there to give you a heads up so that you can be active and do something about it, and you can lead yourself to goodness and survive whatever trouble is up ahead. And that's the end of this video. So remember what I said. Check every single word. Don't take my word for it. Find the truth for yourself. God bless, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now.